think it's really important to try to come up with just a handful of drills that you're gonna use consistently and rotate them, right? So practice isn't the same every day, but so that you don't have to spend a lot of time explaining drills. I mean, the reality is, you know, for any skill set you're trying to teach, there's a gazillion different drills, so why try to teach 10 of them, right? Why not come up with 2? Yeah, just efficiency. I mean, and that's what planning does. It's gonna make you more efficient, you're gonna have more efficient practices, you're going to, again, especially with limited time, limited resources, limited numbers of baskets, that changes on a practice-to-practice basis, all that stuff. And so if you don't plan, you can end up wasting a lot of time that you could have gotten some good teaching in. Build-ups, so again, early on in the season, we're teaching, you know, whatever, defensive footwork, and a lot of it's 1-on-0, and then you're doing some 1-on-1 stuff, and then 2-on-2 stuff. And so now, like the first 10 minutes of most of our practices are just our man-to-man defensive build-ups. And they're able to now just go through them. I hardly have to say anything. It's like, okay, boom, go. And for the next 8 to 10 minutes, they do those same build-up drills. So it's super efficient, the repetition is there. For the lack of intensity that you might start to have after a while because it's the same, he thought it was worth it because of the repetition. Timing, I think this is really important, and I used to make the mistake of, you know, you'd spend a lot of time explaining something and then expect them to go right into a high intensity drill. Well, you've totally killed the mood with all of the explaining, right? So a lot of times if I know we're gonna be explaining a drill or I'm gonna be doing a lot of teaching, we'll do it like after the water break halfway through practice, right? So, you know, we've peaked, and then we go get water, and so now they're back down here, and now we're gonna build back up again. So make sure you're really conscious of the timing of when you're doing certain things. Minimizing standing on the sidelines. We try to break them up as much as possible. I know, you know, sometimes we struggle with, well, I wanna be able to see what they're doing, and so that means we're all at one basket, and you have a long line of kids, right? And frankly, that ends up being, I think, more inefficient than if they're all at baskets and you're kind of scanning and correcting as they're going, but at least they're all staying active, and especially with younger kids. I think early on in the season, you're gonna be doing more of that, stopping things, correcting. And a lot of times, you just have to have the willpower to sort of bite your lip and let the action go. I think I watched like a Patino video one time, or I talked to somebody who had seen one of his practices or something, and they said he was really good about, he'd hardly ever stop the action. He would just sub guys out as the action was going and pull them over, and probably had a few choice words for him sometimes, but it wasn't stopping everybody else, right? And there's a way to do that, but of course sometimes the point you're making to this person, you want it to be made to everybody. You know, and I tell them, like, I'm not gonna stop the action, but you better be listening to me when I'm saying something as the action's going. You know, you gave up the middle, right? I'm not stopping the action, but I'm yelling that out right now as things are continuing. You need to internalize that.
I think that we need to actually make a concerted effort to dedicate time, like even if it's a 5 to 8 minute period, to where you're only making corrections while the game is going, because that's what you have to do the entire game, right? We get X amount of timeouts, and if your whole practice plan is based off of them only being able to listen to you when it stopped and they look at you and that's the only time they can get direction, they can't apply that on live. When it comes to game time, they haven't had any of that repetition. So there has to be that implication to where you're going in a live scrimmage, you're walking down the sideline and you're coaching them as they're running down the other way.
Yeah, you have to give them time to just go 5-on-5 uninterrupted, especially after the first few practices. There should be a segment of every practice where they're able to just do that. I think that was a Valvano thing I remember. He said, you know, at least 12 to 15 minutes every day, they have to be able to just play without you stopping them. And sometimes the other thing you can do is just sit there and watch them. Don't coach them like you would in a game. And then at the end of, you know, you put 10 minutes on the clock, let them play, have, you know, one of your coaches, you know, referee or whatever, and then at the end of it, you say, now, what'd you guys think of that? And they know when it didn't look pretty, when they weren't executing right, and you didn't stop it, right? But you still are able to get your teaching point across. Focusing first practice of the season. So we talk talk a lot about, hey, when it's time to go from one thing to the next, we're going. We're not walking around, we're not, tossing balls and get one more shot in, and then the paying attention thing, just making them get used to your voice and commanding their attention to that. They're in practice and their heads are all over the place, and their previous coach didn't really demand that. So, but that goes into the efficiency thing, paying attention. Something we do every year before practices start, we really try to get them connected to something bigger than themselves. And so with you guys, it would be talking about the tradition of local hoops, the mission of local hoops, the players who have come through the program before them, what those people have invested, the fact that those people are looking back at what local hoops is doing now and seeing whether they're making the same level of investment. For anybody, you go out into the corporate world or anywhere, right? And your family tradition, all that stuff is what makes you buy in. And until you have that, it makes it hard to get performance. So we spend a lot of time on that early in the season. How much focus do you put into culture of a team when you do to impose your current culture or desired culture on new athletes? Effort. There's no substitute for that. And it might not be your best player, but if you have, sometimes if it's your guys at the end of the bench, there's nothing worse than the guys at the end of the bench who are lazy. Right? And that kills everything. Right? Like it's not fair when the guys at the end of the bench are the hardest workers and they still don't get to play very much, but that's not as bad as the guys at the end of the bench being lazy and not caring.
Right.
So you gotta have those guys who work hard. And I'd be looking for that right away. And usually, when you think about it, guys who work hard, it's rare that they're selfish. Right? Because usually in a team sports setting, if you're willing to work hard in every aspect of the game, you're working hard in those aspects that help the team and don't give you any glory, right? So I think that effort thing cures a whole lot, and it's the stuff that's, you guys know this, it's the stuff away from the basketball, it's the extra effort going to the offensive glass, it's the diving on the floor, all of that stuff. So effort's a big one. How much do they talk? So you're way ahead of the game if you can find kids who just open their mouths. What does it do for energy?
Right.
It kills practices when you have a whole bunch of kids who are quiet, right? They might be skilled, they might be really smart kids, they might read things well, they might not ever give you any attitude, but it's like a morgue, right? And there's just those days when you need some people to liven it up. So kids who open their mouths, that's huge too. And I do think the younger they are, the more you can teach them that a little bit. And we were talking about getting kids to talk. And I saw Krzyzewski at a clinic one time, and he was talking about talking on defense. And they were doing some defensive drill, and he stopped and he told this kid, he said, hey, I need you to talk on defense. And the kid, hey, I gotta go train. Okay, go, right? So kid's not saying anything. Like, hey, you gotta open your mouth, you gotta talk, right? Okay, got it, coach, right? So they start doing the defensive drill again. Kid's not saying anything, and Krzyzewski's like, I was getting pissed. Right? This kid's like showing me up in front of 1,000 people, just ignoring what I'm asking him to do. So he says, he stops and he says, didn't I tell you to talk? And the kid said, well, what do you want me to say? Well, how many times do we say, you guys gotta talk. You gotta talk on D. Right? And then what are you guys doing? You gotta talk. Well, I know when I was in high school, in every drill, defensively, we were forced to say something very specific. And then it just became instinctive, right? Whether it was on a close, you're yelling ball, you're jumping to the ball, you're yelling help, 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 and you insist, even your quiet kids, you can insist upon that because you told them exactly what to say. And then it becomes a habit. But that's critical, telling them what to say, not just yelling at them. You have to talk. You need to see kids go 5-on-5, but figure out ways to structure it where you're valuing other things. So, like a lot of times when we go live, we won't score it with normal we'll score with whatever we want to emphasize, whatever we want to see. So we'll say you get 5 points for an offensive rebound. That's the only way your team scores. And all of a sudden guys are, flying around, right? And the losing team does a 17 or whatever, right? Now guys are flying in. And you see right there, you'll find like some kids are like, I still ain't going to fly in there. I don't care if we get 5 points for it or not, right? That will tell you a lot about how internally motivated certain kids are. Hey, the only way you score is a dive on the floor. You get 5 points for your team if somebody dives on the floor. Guys are flying all over the place. But some aren't. I ain't getting on the floor for 5 points. That'll tell you a lot about a kid. Yeah, we'll call those hustle, like sometimes they'll just say, okay, we're scoring hustle points today. And then it's just offensive rebounds, dives, and charges. That's the only way you score. Focus on team-wise at the beginning, involvement on the sidelines. I was just all over my guys today about this. So, we're doing, a defensive drill and high-intensity drill. And the guys who are standing on the side drive me nuts, right? Like you're just totally in your own world, right? Give these guys some energy because if you're not going to do it here, you're certainly not going to be doing it on the bench when we need that kind of energy, right? So we really want guys to get involved on the sidelines and be talking, right? Well, what do I say? Okay, well, here, let me tell you a few things you can say to guys who are out here busting their ass. Positive or nothing. Right? I want to hear you coaching. I don't want to hear you telling guys what they didn't do. Okay? That's a fine line. How do they, again, a lot of them have never been taught how to tell someone something positive. Right? That's a skill that's learned. You can see why they don't know how to say, hey man, next time, we should do it this way. Right? Instead it's, man, what are you doing? Right? Like everybody's receptive to that. And we're telling them that, and then in the next breath, we're just screaming negative stuff at them. Right? You're modeling terrible behavior. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm chewing on guys constantly, but that, you still have to be conscious of that, right? Teaching them how to be positive. Empower your leaders. I'm convinced leaders are not made. There are kids who have leadership qualities by the time they get to you, and there are those who do not. But whatever it is, if it's somebody that you trust to sort of say and do the right things, empower them. For two reasons. Number one, that kid will then feel like they have permission to go ahead and lead. The other kids will get a very clear message that it's their job to follow their lead. Types of schemes. Depends on personnel. And I used to be really bad at this. Sometimes I probably still am. But, we've all been taught a certain way. We've all taken our basketball philosophy and strategy from what we've learned, right? Whether it was a high school coach, college coach, youth coach, whatever, we teach what we know. Sometimes what we know doesn't fit our personnel. And so I think it's amazing when you see really, really good coaches who've been successful for a long time, they adapt to their personnel from year to year. They might have some basic principles. I mean, I would love to see this, you guys, that frankly I haven't seen a whole lot with local hoops. If they have the freedom to just put in like 2 just sets that are unique to their team, again, I didn't do this when I was a younger coach, but let's say you've got a really, really, really good knockdown shooter. You got to create a set that has that shooter going and screening for a big and then coming off of a staggered or something where you're going to get that guy some shots. It's kind of simple, right? But we'll just put in a set because we want to put in a set, and that's a set that we've been taught and that we know, regardless of whether that's the best thing for your personnel, right? Or if you got a big kid, you got to do some things to get him the basketball or her the basketball. And especially when a team is going to be jamming that person up, you got to figure out ways to free them up. The same thing with the defensive stuff. We have, for the last 5 years, I was raised nothing but pressure man-to-man defense. Last 5 years, we've been 95% Syracuse 2-3. And we have been really, really good defensively. I would have never believed I was zone ignorant, which most of us are, quite frankly. Okay? How do you balance getting a good shot without killing confidence? Okay, first identify your kids who need confidence, okay? I was that player in high school. Kelly was that player when he came out of high school. The kids who the coach needs to say, hey, you have permission, take some risks, right? Shoot the ball. It's okay if it doesn't go in. It's not, I know you're not being selfish when you shoot the basketball, okay? Identify those kids and just constantly pump them up, okay? But then you have to follow through with it, right? You can't yank them the second they, well, that probably wasn't the best one. And, you have to go ahead and feed them with confidence. Focus in transition. So we just started this year, our guards take the ball out. Their bigs and their wings, their job is to go. And I mean, most kids think they're sprinting. They're not sprinting. If you watch the film, ball goes through the hoop, that is relaxation time for everybody. Even for just a split second. Ball goes through the hoop. Okay. Right? And the teams that will run you out of the gym, you can just watch the second that ball goes through the hoop, whoever has responsibility for getting down the floor, I mean, there is no time wasted. They're going. That guard is clapping, yelling, right? Vocal, talking. You got to tell them what to say, not just talk, right? Outlet, or ball, whatever. And the guy getting the ball out, it's not, okay, the ball hit the ground, okay. They think they're not seeing what they're doing. So in their minds, they're going hard. But it's amazing. You watch teams that really push the ball. I mean, and it's demoralizing to the other team when they're really good at that. So now, yes, great point. I see a lot of coaches quit turning the ball over. They don't understand what causes turnovers. So what causes turnovers? Now, obviously, you can't eliminate all of those from basketball. Well, things like fundamentals that aren't being taught a lot of times because it takes a long time. And again, you guys have a tournament damn near every weekend, so you got to get ready for the game, right? You got to put in stuff. Kids can't pivot. They can't do this and then come back across their body and do this. Or if they can do that. My own kid. But he can't do it on the other foot. He can't do this and then do this. So you're passing the ball with a person guarding you, and you're trying to go like this. So, I mean, little drills where you're maximizing their window of ball handling and doing it with both feet. Okay, I want you to reverse pivot. What's that, coach? Right? So we do, especially early in the season, come down, jump stop, reverse pivot, forward pivot. Then the same on the other foot. Reverse pivot, forward pivot. All that stuff that most of us did when you went to individual camp, right, when you were younger. But a lot of that stuff isn't being taught anymore. So pivoting would help tremendously. If you can pivot, or you step towards your pass, you're now not passing across your body. So if you're guarding me, and I'm trying to pass there, and I have the ball here, and I do this, a lot of times that's the deflection, right? That's very difficult to do if I do this. So when you're doing a pass, here's another thing on efficiency, combine your drills. Al Harrison was a master at this. So if you're doing layups, 3-line layups, instead of just, okay, lay it up, get the ball, throw it to the next guy, he throws it to the next guy, okay? We would call it focus layups. So it was layup, guy getting the rebound, had to keep it at his forehead, throw a forehead pass. Person in the corner caught it, stepped to the shooting line and threw a baseball pass. This person threw a bounce pass to the rebounding line. They threw a chest pass back, and then I go in. Then we go through the next time, and when we got to the basket, we'd have to jump stop, step over, and lay it up with our left hand. So you can do just in a simple layup drill, combine all sorts of those fundamental things. Little things like that. Dealing with pressure. Oh my God. Right? The second somebody's being denied, the second somebody gets into you, what do? Right? Right? And I'm being pressured, and all of a sudden, and everything else just went out the window. Right? And then I try to Well, you know, my assistant coach is really good. Hey, the second somebody gets up into you, go buy it. Film study sessions, short. Film can be valuable, I think, in like a 5-minute, this, just to give yourself credibility, I think more than anything. Here, this is what I'm talking about when I say you're not jumping to the ball defensively, right? Boom, here it is. Okay, let's go out on the floor. And then you hammer them on jumping to the ball. Now it's not just you being crazy imagining things anymore. How long we scrimmage, we always run out of the half court. So if we do like a half court drill, it could even be something 2-on-2, we'll have 6 guys waiting on the baseline or half court or on the side or something, and then the 2-on-2 stuff's going on, and then I yell live, and everybody's in, it's a live possession, and we run out of it down to the other end. And then we do the 2-on-2, break it down on that, I want them all, I hate the, okay, drill's over, basketball went through the hoop, or ball went through the hoop, and now I stop. Okay, I want them used to converting quickly.